back. All right, so we were on section 8, helpful video links. For this, I have video links to today's number high yield routine, Beyond the Fingers, 10 boards and place value, Powtoon's animation video, the corners engagement strategy, talk moves, 3-phase lesson, cognitively guided instruction, beginning it, cognitively guided lesson example, and guided math lesson. My technology list included, oh my goodness, Powtoon, which is a free animation video editor, the Edmodo, which I want to use in my classroom because then everything with the students is kept right there. I have the Lucidchart, YouTube, which we've used a lot, and then MindMeister. And then I also have the article Mind Mapping as a Tool in Mathematics Education. Section 10 is my Depth of Knowledge project. So let's move this. Okay. So the first thing I have in here is the Edmodo assignment, and I took and copied our group's discussion and put that in here because we had some really good ideas on subtraction. My explain what you know from that discussion, or from negative numbers. My subtraction concept map is in here. There's my final one. And that's also one of the artifacts that I chose. I have my link to that, for the Lucidchart. And then it says, I created a subtraction concept map by initially using only the knowledge that I had at hand of subtraction. After some later assignments, readings, and reflections, I edited the map twice to represent my change in knowledge of the concept of subtraction. I selected this because even as an educator, I should always strive to learn more and allow my understanding of concepts to change and adjust as necessary. This artifact supports NBPT standard number 2, which is knowledge of mathematics. As a math teacher, it is imperative that I understand as much about mathematics as I can and continue to learn the rest of my career in order to provide students with the best education and learning possible. I learned that though I know quite a bit about basic math concepts, I can always take it a step further and dig deeper to increase my understanding. Coming from an English background, I can apply the same resolve to be constantly learning and practicing my craft. I can make the effort to continue learning myself in order to best support my students. So I have that. Oh, I also put in here for that project, because it included chapter 7 and 8, the charts that we were supposed to do. Numbers relate through comparison, quantities including greater than, but addition and subtraction are connected. So I put my thoughts, my notes from reading those 2 chapters in my Depth of Knowledge project. I have my content analysis of student reasoning. This was our Gretchen video. Then my content analysis synthesis paper. I know that this was, I didn't turn this one in on time, but I went ahead and wrote it so that I could have it for my book. And I talk about the 4 main operations of math, or the building blocks of many different math concepts learned in school. And then I talk about how when I initially was asked to create the concept map about what I knew about subtraction without looking up any information. The majority of what I came up with was statements about what subtraction was or was not and how it was done. But during the next step, I added connections between my original statements or thoughts. And then when studying my initial concept map, one thing that was not present was the idea of cognitive demand. And we had talked about that after, and so I added that complexity of thought processes to my map. So in going back over the final concept map, I just added all that. I have analyzing robust and limited evidence. My fourth artifact is the content analysis of tasks, the CGI. In this assignment, I sorted a total of 12 tasks between low demand and high demand categories. I selected this artifact because it is important to understand the differences between the two categories and adjust my curriculum or incorporate appropriate demand levels in my teaching. This artifact supports Proposition 1 and in Task Standard 7, which are teachers are committed to students and their learning and planning for instruction. Students require low and high demand tasks, and as an educator, I need to make sure that I am giving students the opportunity to do both and extend their thinking. Students who only see low demand tasks will not learn at the same level as those who experience both. And as their teacher, I'm responsible for making sure they have the opportunity to be successful, completing both levels of tasks. I learned that by evaluating and sorting the tasks that I am asking of my students, I can understand which is a low demand task or question and which are high demand. This allows me the ability to adjust the tasks or questions and what the students are being asked to do in order to ensure that I'm using best practices as a math teacher. Then here's my artifact. I have high level on the right side, lower level on the left. And this is how I sorted them. And then I just have the original. I also placed in here the level of demands, information sheet and notes, so that I could go back and reference what those are. I included using Webb's depth of knowledge to increase rigor, article by Gerald Angst. And then the Webb's depth of knowledge module context ceilings. So recall and reproduction, basic application, strategic thinking, extended thinking. And I liked the questions that were asked. What is the knowledge? How can the knowledge be used? Why can the knowledge be used? And then how else can the knowledge be used? Textbook activities. So in here I just have all of these from chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, and 17. I want to share 17, the ratios, proportions, and proportional reasoning, because that was a lot of where I was at when I did my lessons for this class. So I chose activity 17.3, dripping faucet on page 448. Pose the following problem to students. If you brush your teeth twice a day and leave the water running when you brush, how many gallons of water will you waste in 1 day? In 2 days? In a week, a month, a number of days? So you invite students to gather real data if possible, or use the recommended time to brush teeth, which is 2 minutes. Ask students to explore the ratio of number of days to water wasted and to illustrate their data using tables, graphs, or equations. I like that. And then 16, again, relating back to ratios and proportions, it was developing decimal and percent concepts and decimal computation. So my activity was 16. My activity was 16.4. The Amazing Race. Use the Amazing Race activity page or give students cash register tape. The friends below are running and the decimals next to their names represent how far they are from the start line. Who do you think is winning? Can you place these friends on a line to show where they are located between the start and finish? So we have Amy, Layla, Hissa, Marco, Leo, and Gerard. And this activity can be differentiated by changing the values of the decimals or including more friends. So those were just a couple that I wanted to share. There was hexagon holes that I chose for chapter 15. Developing whole number place value concepts. In chapter 10 was the 3 other ways, activity 10.6. And because we talked a lot about the subtraction, in chapter 11, developing strategies for addition and subtraction computation, I chose 11.7, how much between, on page 245. So you provide students with a blank hundreds chart, give the students 2 numbers. Their task is determine how much from one number to the next. And then I included a picture of a hundreds chart. Learning theories. Learning theories was my section 12. I don't need that one. Okay, my video analysis of Beyond Fingers and Learning Theories. I liked this because it included the blooms. We had to include the level of blooms that was being used, and then what type of multiple intelligence that was being tapped into, whether it was visual, spatial, interpersonal, and then the DOK level of question, whether it was level 1, level 3, and then the example of metacognition, and then how the students could use that information. And then what I heard, and then what I saw when I watched a 2-minute block in the video. Then we made a Gardner's learning theories of the intelligences. And then describe those principles of learning. I have a couple. Let me just go to my artifact here. I have my levels of questions worksheet again. But my artifact title was Comparison of Principles of Learning. And this one, I spent a lot of time creating this one, talking about the different multiple intelligences and getting the definition. Again, the description of learner, application to education, the contributor and keywords. So even the first one was intelligences. Then that multiple intelligences. So then I described verbal linguistic, logical mathematical, visual spatial, naturalistic bodily kinesthetics, interpersonal, intrapersonal. And then there's the Bloom's taxonomy, depths of knowledge, metacognition, goes all the way there. So for my artifact, I chose this artifact because it is a great resource to understand the similarities and differences between the different principles of learning. These principles include Bloom's taxonomy, Webb's depth of knowledge, Gardner's multiple intelligences, and metacognition. This artifact supports INTAS Standard 1, learner development. The teacher understands how learners grow and develop, recognizing that patterns of learning and development vary individually within and across the cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical areas, and designs and implements developmentally appropriate and challenging learning experiences. This standard is important because as I understand how students learn and learn differently from each other, I can better adjust my teaching to meet their needs and make sure that the material is being presented in ways that they can learn from successfully. This helps me plan for students to access the learning in various ways, such as with physical manipulatives, movement, individual and group experiences, and teaching them to evaluate their own thinking and understanding of the concept through metacognition. I learned that in addition to the principles that I was already aware of and trying to incorporate, which was Bloom's, DOK, Gardner, that metacognition is a better fit for how I want to reach my students. And why, for me, realizing why that's so important. As metacognition is also a focus of my school administration and a principle that the students greatly benefit from, being able to understand it in relation to the other theories helps me better implement this principle in my teaching. So I have that. I have my list of Bloom's Taxonomy math question stems to be able to help them. And then a copy of my Gardner Bloom with the linguistic, logical, visual, spatial. Professional noticing is my next section. Okay, I have my notes, why it's important to observe students. Okay, and then I took a screenshot of the assessment tool sample because I thought that that was valuable from your Powtoon. I included my lesson, my observations here. Then my next artifact was my open sharing strategy lesson plan. Okay, whoops. Oh, open share strategy lesson plan observation. I forgot to put observation there. So this was the student observation part of the open strategy sharing lesson. Students worked on a word problem on their whiteboards and then asked to share their work with a partner. This artifact supports NCT M Standard 1, which is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Math students often are frustrated with math and their lack of progress, and teaching students to persevere and learn to work through problems carefully if necessary. Encouraging students to share strategies that may or may not have worked and understand why it's important to both students and learning and teaching in order for concepts to be able to be fully understood. I learned that partner, group, and class sharing is a great tool to use with my students to increase their understanding of a math concept. By allowing students the opportunity to share, discuss, and ask each other questions, they can increase their learning in an environment forgiving of mistakes while encouraging them to keep trying, persevere, while also making their learning more visible to themselves, their classmates, and me as their teacher. So this is where it made me think of that we do hard things. I have my question probes when I was observing. And then that's my second artifact in this, is my answers to those questions. Whoops. Student observations with question probes is my artifact title. I observed and questioned 2 students during a lesson on finding equivalent fractions. The goal of this assignment was to gather meaningful evidence of the students' learning through careful observation and questioning. The reason why I selected this artifact is because through the process of writing down what I observed, the students' answers to my questions, and a picture of their work, I was better able to understand what the students were thinking and how they were doing. This artifact supports InTASK Standard 6, which is assessment. The teacher understands and uses multiple methods of assessment to engage learners in their own growth, to monitor learner progress, and to guide the teachers' and learners' decision-making. Assessment is crucial to the growth of the student and the practice of the teacher. Without assessment, the teacher would have no idea if the students are learning successfully and would not know if their teaching is meeting the students' needs. The better the teacher can observe and attend to students' learning, the teacher will be able to create lessons that will allow the students to be more successful. I learned that I can observe students more carefully than I do at times while they are working, and to make sure I ask specific questions in order to better understand their level of learning. Also, I need to take into account various other factors, including body language and any words they say to themselves. By being more focused in what I am watching for, I can better understand where my students are and what they need and adjust accordingly. So I have my observations for the two students there. And in this section, I also included an artifact interpreting children's understanding. I observed this student during her math class and then applied what I learned to determine the strategy she used, standards the task connected to in order to determine where she was in understanding the task or concept that she was being asked to do, which was find equivalent fractions. I chose this artifact because I do this every day as an educator in order to be able to meet all of my students' needs. This artifact supports InTASK Standard 7, Planning for Instruction. The teacher plans instruction that supports every student in meeting rigorous learning goals by drawing upon knowledge of content areas, curriculum, cross-disciplinary skills, and pedagogy, as well as knowledge of learners in the community context. Good teaching is adjusting one's teaching based on the current understanding of the students, and also supports students' learning by knowing where the student is currently at and understanding what the student needs best, whether it is to remediate, fix misconceptions, or move on to the next level of the task. I've learned that by careful observation and taking the time to determine exactly where a student is at in their learning, that I can better adjust my planning to meet the needs of the students. If something that I am doing is not working, then I need to adjust my plans accordingly to help all the students be successful. So here was my application assignment. I had done this on Hannah. And it made me realize that observation is important and what we're looking for. And that we can attend to our students. And there's the okay. Some other things from here's my interview form. I included my noticing framework. Step 1, attending. Okay. And my rubric for the notes. And my video analysis. And then I included the professional noticing and my more professional noticing articles.